On the Sunday morning in December, when Annie was found, her body was removed from the beach within an hour and 25, 30 minutes, and obviously taken back to Crosshouse Hospital for the pathologist to determine the cause of death, even though the police had already told somebody locally that it was a suicide and it was tragic, and it appeared in the papers the following day. Bizarre, but true. We come to the point now where the police have said in the past, even though we've actually asked them to define what they mean, that there was no criminality in Ellie's case and that it was a tragic drowning. Well, the science of drowning is quite complex. And again, we've done the science, so we're grateful for the fact that we've got a science background anyway. But we've done the science, and the pathology report gives no indication of length of time in the water. Yes, it mentions the cloudiness to the cornea and stuff like that, but there's no suggestion in any of the documents that we have read at which point would she have drowned. I know it's probably quite difficult, according to pathologists, to determine at what point somebody has drowned and therefore what time the person died. But let's move on from a bit of the science for the time being and talk about something else. Let's talk about the fact that there's a very, very powerful link between the absence of marine diatoms and the nature of the pathology report that we have and been supplied with, and the nature of what it does or does not tell us. Annie's body did not show any immediate signs of bruising, which we found peculiar, but at the same time discover that pathologists will tell you that dead bodies don't bruise, which is understandable. But bodies which have been drowned, it suggests, and the references are available, that bruising can occur up to 24, 48 hours later. Now, according to the Mrs. Gunberg in Sweden, when Annie's body is repatriated to Sweden from London and they opened the transporter coffin, she described it, and we have an affidavit from this lady, that she'd never seen such bruising in a drowning victim. There were pressure marks on Annie's neck, there was substantial bruising to the side of her face, there was substantial bruising to her abdomen. She hadn't been sexually assaulted, but she was being, according to the affidavit, she'd been given a severe beating. And obviously in Sweden, this lady had dealt with an awful lot of bodies as a result of drowning in a place like Sweden, and had said quite frankly, this isn't a standard drowning, not remotely a standard drowning. And we've had it confirmed that the bruising does appear, despite the fact that the body is now dead. We have been told that bruising takes a while to come to the fore. And Gus Dunberg has said, quite frankly, as I suppose you would concur by looking at the pictures yourself, Annie had been severely beaten. Now that might explain a number of things. That might explain the reason for no diatoms or no saltwater diatoms, marine diatoms. It might also explain why there are no real sightings of Annie between 4:30, 4:25 in the afternoon and 8:30 the following morning. It may also leave us to assume that yes, her body was dumped at high tide over the sea wall, and it's accessible and possible, and her coat and belongings were thrown over the wall at the same time. Equally, there is a school of thought out there that she did walk into the sea and drown, but it's just impractical and very, very difficult to, as I say, come to the conclusion that without the diatoms, where's the evidence? And so we've come to some kind of conclusion, haven't we? The conclusion that we think we have come to is Annie was involved in a relationship with this guy who allegedly looked like one of the Leslie brothers, who was a Scottish international that she'd met at Edinburgh Rugby in the clubhouse, or whatever they call it nowadays, and established a relationship with him. I've actually asked a forensic psychiatrist what she thought. I've also asked a psychologist what she thought, a totally separate person. And they come to the same conclusion. This isn't a drowning per se. This is a drowning in a bath, a sink, where Annie has been held down, hence the thumbprints and fingerprint marks on her shoulders and neck. Annie's been beaten by a man or a woman as the result of a revenge attack. It was described to me as a revenge attack. Somebody hasn't liked the relationship that's been established between, let's call him man X, because we don't know who he is, although I do, and Annie Borjesson. And Annie Borjesson, when going into the car park and coming back out in some kind of very, very strong mood, and walked out of the airport thinking, I don't need to be here, I don't want to be here, is the result of actually she's seen people that she knows from Edinburgh waiting to talk to her and see her in the airport, and she's thought, I don't need to be here. So, who are these people? Or who is this person? And did somebody drive across from Edinburgh to bring her money so that she could buy a plane ticket home? We can't confirm whether she had a plane ticket or not. It suggested she didn't, but we can't see a manifest after all this time from 2005 to determine whether she was actually in a position to fly home and a ticket had been paid for. But the next part of this little podcast is there is somebody or someone or more than one person in Edinburgh who didn't want to know any more about Annie, and neither did they want to actually allow Annie to maintain a relationship with man X, who was alleged, who himself described him as a former Scottish international and whose name was Martin Leslie. So we will investigate this little trace and see what we come up with. I think we know the name of this guy, so by elimination we would probably know the name of his wife, girlfriend or fiancée at that time. So off we go again with a bit more research into the death of Annie Borjesson.